Welcome back. It's still Daybreak on Trust TV this Friday morning. Well, we'll take a look at our first, or should I say, our main topic of the day today. And we're going to be talking about technology and education. Well, technology has played and it will continue to play an essential role in delivering education to students, most especially those outside school. Now, there's one important reason for education, and that is to build individuals for tomorrow. Now, this in turn improves the social, economic, and political well-being of a nation. However, the current state of Nigerian education is not effectively producing built individuals, just like the president stated. Now, with an estimated 13.2 million children out of school, high literacy level, infrastructural deficit and decay, unqualified teachers, strikes, and inadequate instructional materials, to mention just a few challenges, we can clearly see the effect of decades of neglect that the education sector has suffered. Now, today we're asking this very pertinent question: what role education technology can play in Nigeria and in the development of education system in this country? To help us answer these questions, we have two very erudite personalities when it comes to technology and, of course, education and the marriage between the two, that is education technology. We have Faiz Bashir, who is the CEO of Flexisaf Edusoft Limited. Welcome.
Thank you.
And, of course, we have Samir Abubakar, who is should I say, a tech bro, should I say. You're welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
All right, so let me start with you, Faiz. We're talking about education and technology, the marriage between the two. Now, what basic role can technology play in the promotion of education or in the upliftment of education, most especially in our country?
Okay, thank you once again, Ibrahim, for having me. So, obviously, technology is playing a significant role across different facets of our life, and education is one of it. So the key role of technology in education is how can it increase access and quality. And so if you look at the statistics, there are over 260 million out-of-school children in the world, and Nigeria has about the numbers with different sources, and so on. So what technology can do is how it will be able to address these challenges and reduce this number. So that's access. When we talk about access, right? Technology will be able to scale. You will be able to have educational content that students and learners will be able to have access to. And you have now devices becoming ubiquitous. Internet is improving. Access is improving. So technology will be able to to increase this access. And talking about quality, there's the content, and different tools in terms of maybe games, simulations, and so on. All this will improve the experience. When you talk about learning. And obviously that will improve quality. So these are, for me, the two key roles that technology will play in education.
All right.
You talked about access becoming ubiquitous and coming to you. Do we see that asymmetry across every facet? Ubiquitous, yes, but there is still a problem of affordability depending on the class of citizens that we have. So as much as this is desirable, what's your assessment of how much it is permeating with regards to those from the middle to low income houses?
I think the gap is getting closer.
Okay.
They're getting more access, but it's not there yet. I know in rural areas, getting access to internet is still limited. So getting access to YouTube videos, for example, streaming videos, will be a lot more difficult than people in the cities that have access to higher speed internet. So that definitely is increasing the divide between people in the cities and students or people in the rural areas where access to this basic infrastructure is limited. Though just recently I heard the Starlink, which is a satellite internet broadband internet company, is coming to Nigeria. So those are kind of initiatives that can bridge that divide. Obviously, for the telcos that normally are supposed to provide services there, I know USPF is also trying to work with the various telcos to create an incentive for them to actually go to those locations, to set up the infrastructure to provide the internet. But obviously, it can't cover all the places. But using satellite technology, for example, you can actually reach a much larger area, meaning that those people without access could also be able to get the same access to opportunity like those in the cities.
All right, Faris, let me come to you now. As somebody who has been in the education technology sphere for a while, you can be considered to be an expert when it comes to this, and you've had occasion to interface with government agencies, state governments, and what have you, concerning how to build these solutions, or how to get these solutions to where they need to get, and of course projects and programs you've actually worked with. From your experience, is government, I know they are aware that they actually we need to do something different. If not for anything, COVID-19 opened our eyes to a lot of things that we need to do. You understand, remote learning and all these things. The government now, do you think they are doing enough in order to push the adoption of technology in our schools?
Okay, I think this is a very important question and subject. So just like all other areas, I think it's always subjective. But generally, the awareness is really there. I think there's a lot of initiatives by the government across the different agencies. You have TETFund, UBEC, and other examples I will give, like NCC, NIDA, and so on. They are trying to do a lot. And also with the COVID awareness, you said, there are interventions, going on, by TETFund. How do they, provide more technology to increase the access and so on? So the main question is it sufficient? I think, because of the cumbersome nature of the country and, population explosion and available resources. So that's where, the challenge is, right? I think government is trying to do a lot, but the rate, to be able to catch up with this, explosion, that's where I think a lot can be done more, looking at across board the overall budget, how much budget is allotted to education, and so on. So yeah, the awareness is there. Different government agencies are doing a lot, but the demand is too high that a lot more has to be done.
Okay, still staying with you. Sorry, let me just still stay with you. We talked about the government now, but as individuals or as ordinary citizens, is there anything that we can do? Because I know there are lots of people that are passionate about education and technology and the marriage between the two, you being one of them, but you started a company. Not everybody can do that. You understand? Not everybody can do that. So as an individual, is there anything that we can be able to do as private citizens to actually push this?
Definitely. So there's a lot that we are doing and that can be done. Right? EdTech is a growing industry, and recently there has been an increasing interest, even in terms of EdTech investment, especially in Africa and Nigeria, where there's need to be able to, to close this gap in terms of access and quality education. So the role of the, private sector really is, how do you innovate? How do you create technologies, that will be able to scale, and reach these numbers. So, for example, in terms of content, how do you build quality content based on maybe curriculum, the coverage and so on. And that will help in solving the gap of maybe teacher-student ratio and the availability of quality teachers, right? You have students that will be able to gain a lot from this available content and so on. And secondly, how do you create, we talked about whether technology and infrastructure is readily available, and Samir gave an example about the satellite, internet and so on. So, but from the private sector, what they can do is, how do they build solutions, right, that say has offline, support. So it makes it easier for people that have limited internet access to be able to access, this content. How do you make it lighter? How do you increase the, the user experience and things like that? So there's a lot of innovation going around at the private sector to help in this regard.
Coming to you, Samir, a number of things were running through my head as you were speaking. First of all, especially because you're a software developer, there had been the clamor for not just the infrastructure, but also developing sufficient local content, so that in a bid to catch up with the world, we don't socialize wrongly or lose our values or stop telling our stories, because you jump on the satellite televisions and you don't like some of the languages you see there. The experience are not exactly local, so it doesn't speak to their environment. It's a completely different thing. Even the foods that are projected are sort of strange to them. So you wake up today, you tell your kid, what do you want? They're telling you candies, they're telling you, rather than the granuts and the kuli and the water that we grew up on. How much are people like you doing to ensure that whilst we ramp up capacity on the part of infrastructure and the rest, that we have sufficient local content that speaks to our culture, that speaks to our identity, that speaks to our peculiarities?
Yeah, so a few years ago we started experimenting with e-learning and also looking at creating local content for our schools, taking the curriculum, the NERDC curriculum, just to make sure it's more tailored to our audience, which is the local audience. One thing we immediately realized was that, we need to get content developers, people that are creative, they can do the animation, they can do the voiceover, do this script and tell the story from our perspective rather than, getting ice cream, lollipop, but, teaching, for example, a topic around the rivers, but talking about River Niger, Benue, rather than, Mississippi and, so we've experimented with those. We've created some learning videos. We made it available during the COVID, just to see if people were interested. And there's been quite a lot of interest in that. Schools used it during the lockdown to give their pupils, access to learn. And teachers also use it as a way of blended learning. They would ask you to watch a video and then have the discussion. So it's definitely something that we need to localize, and also we need to ensure that we also talk about our values and not to import other values as well. So it's a good way also for nation building. Talking about some of the challenges and situations we have here. Try to educate the younger learners in particular. So FlexHub has made some of those contents available. We actually have a platform called Django Kids, where we have content for primary 1 to primary 6. Earlier in the program, they talked about Learning Passport. We've also participated in that, making some of our content available, working with the Ministry of Education as well. So these are some of the areas.
Just to stay with you, I'm a bit curious. So we seem to be worried about the level of integration and offtake, if you like, at the basic educational level. But it doesn't seem like the problem is just with that level. I took a program within the COVID period with a private university and nothing stopped. But I read the papers and then I see the public universities telling you we don't have the infrastructure to do any kind of any of this. I mean, it will require another XYZ amount of years to. But people sit here and take program in the University of Liverpool. That's not an advertisement to the university, by the way. People run doctorate from everywhere across the world. People are taking practicals and certifications right here in their bedroom. And at the same time, we are talking about government agencies doing a lot. Is it that we are not synergizing enough? Is it that we don't have the kind of coordination that would ensure that we have a mass effect rather than these pockets of development everywhere? What's your take on it?
I think you're right. So there's a lot of siloed initiatives, I would say, right? Different agencies, different organizations doing that. Some years ago, there was something around e-government and come up with a master plan for e-government in Nigeria, looking at how to use technology to, enhance the governance and, services.
As you're talking, I'm just thinking of Estonia. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, with the framework, ideally, is supposed to help you coordinate and harmonize all your efforts. So I'd say that's one area that needs to improve. How do we come up with not just the plans on paper, but also how do we create initiatives that constantly look at these plans and how to harmonize them. You talked about tertiary institutions. I'll say access, investment in creating e-learning, I feel would even be cheaper than the traditional classroom learning. Especially if you're leveraging on technology. Students, especially in higher education, have more access to internet and devices. Almost everyone has their phone.
That's right.
Right? So setting up a studio with internet and a computer and a camera, shouldn't be too expensive, right? But I think one of the gap is really the people teaching. Do they use these modern tools or the visual ways of delivering lectures? Exactly. Online content, something you can actually pre-record this content, make it available for your students, instead of printing out, the books and all that. So just really how can you innovate around what you have? It doesn't need to be very expensive, really, to get access to this. A lot of private schools they're talking about may also not have the budgets that most of the public schools have, and they're able to
deploy
implement some of these things.
All right, well, talking about investment and budget and money and all that, because the first thing that comes to somebody's mind when you talk about technology is it's expensive. I'll have to get devices, I'll have to have access to internet. Do I give everybody a device? How do I get this and how do I do that? That is one of the major things that actually comes to mind. You believed so much in merging education and technology that you founded a company to actually bridge that gap, to make sure that actually happens. We're still coming back to the earlier question that I asked, but now talking about private investors now. Let's look at the education technology landscape in Nigeria. Is there sufficient investment, private investment, when it comes to maybe starting companies such as yours to be able to bridge this gap that we're talking about? Because obviously we know the government can't go at it alone. The government may have the money, may have the resources, but they might not have the innovation and the initiative, because that goes down to people like you on the ground. is there sufficient investment when it comes to things like this from the private sector?
I think there's increase, of interest when it comes to education technology and also in the investment, right? But it's not as much as is needed, I think. For investors generally, and it's not just EdTech. I think the other factor that affected is also maybe the attraction to investment and so on, looking at other factors like security and stuff like that. But mainly, I think if you compare EdTech to FinTech, for example, in Nigeria, FinTech is far ahead. It has succeeded more because it has proven to be a very viable and good business. So investors, will be interested to invest in such things. So for EdTech, since COVID and now, like I mentioned, that interest is increasing, but there are still, skepticism around that, right? Specifically because when you talk about education, really it's difficult to remove government, from that. Government has a very important role to play, right, in terms of the underlying infrastructure and so on. So yeah, companies are innovating, they are doing a lot with the investments that are coming in. There are such innovations, but you want to assess and see, do you have the market, right? Do people have access? Do they have the purchasing power?
Because at the end of the day, you have to make money.
Exactly, you have to break even and so on. So these are some of the, the challenges. But I feel because of the relevance and importance of education, attention has to be, be paid to it, and we hope that in the future a lot of things will change. But for me, just like I always give example with telecom, before, maybe GSM and so on, no one ever thought we'll have this kind of penetration.
That's right.
Right, you have to, then the technologies, you have to lay cables and so on, and it's expensive, and the remote areas can't have access to this. And that's why, companies like us are interested, because we are looking at the trend. We believe that technology will improve, internet access will improve. So you are looking at the future, and we believe that there's going to be this impact, that will happen, very soon, and you'll see a lot of improvement.
I'm coming back to the software engineer again. But this time around, not just talking fintech or edtech, because I think this also goes beyond that, because it has a way of also rubbing on health tech. It has a way of rubbing on what we today call the digital economy. Does it appear like we truly, truly understand and appreciate the potentials of this marriage? Because when you look at other climes, the gaps between the haves and the have-not have been seriously broken because of the democratization of access. And like you said, education is a social service, so we cannot always emphasize the aspect of making profit, especially with onboarding. Do you think as a government we appreciate how much and how fast we need to really democratize this access? Because, I'm seeing what access to broadband is doing for young people. Those days, you have to travel several times to Lagos, for instance, to get all kinds of audition, to either get a radio job, a TV job, or even get into the music industry. Today, young people are sitting right in their rooms, auditioning, and putting it out there, and people are looking for them. And then people are building things, and look at e-commerce, how much it has blossomed. Do we fully appreciate that one of the fastest way to really move people out of poverty, democratize knowledge, and improve the welfare of people around themselves is to really go this route and pump some money? Because today, You look at TED Fund, a chunk of their spending is on going abroad to study courses that are ordinarily available in Nigeria. Still pushing money into sectors that we feel like it's even oversaturated. So my question really, if we don't have that field, what can we do differently? Where should we be looking at? What countries are there as models? I know the Estonia story, I know the Rwandan story. What are they doing that we seem not to be doing right now, whether it is in terms of policy or focus, essentially?
Yeah, so going back to our previous conversation where we talked about, initiatives or silos, it's still something like that. So we have all these policies on paper. Implementing them is somewhat challenging. If you look at India, currently has, population of close to about 1.2 billion. And the government has acknowledged that as also an opportunity to use its talent, human resources, and has created initiatives to get, started with, call center agents. How do we get call center agents from US, for example? They were looking for cheap labor, and then they started creating programs to get more call center agents. And then they had discussions with industry to find out what the challenges were for the industry, what skill set they needed, what kind of policies they needed to make their businesses strive. And they came up with other policies around fast-tracking software developers. Instead of going to school for 5 years, you can have basic education and do a 16 months or 12 months course, and you can get employed in one of these companies easily. For companies like us, where we're constantly looking for talent, to build our product, we have to invest a lot more in building those people even after we hire them. So imagine if they were readily available, then you can actually
deploy.
Deploy. So I'd say we need to do more in terms of looking at the opportunity that technology provides on us to leapfrog from where we are. We don't have to go through the process that other countries have gone through. We can skip and leapfrog, especially with mobile technology, satellite technology, all the things that they've gone through, all the pains they've gone through before they got to where they were. We can actually skip all those and get closer to same level of technological advancements as other countries have, if we are able to bring together and discuss with the industry, so companies like FlexiServe, others that are providing solutions. We understand the problem. We've been discussing with our customers, I'll say, and we know what the challenges are for doing business. So how can government create enabling environment, create the right policies, give the right incentives for for companies to invest more? That way you are actually making a deliberate effort to leverage on this technology to advance your economy, get a lot of people out of poverty, get them employed. And also it has this chain reaction of reducing crime rates because people are gainfully employed. The insecurity we're facing right now is also partly because of lack of employment, opportunity. So those are some areas I think we can.
Interesting.
All right. Let me still staying with you, okay? And talking about all these things that we can be able to do and learn from other countries, their mistakes, so that we can skip those parts and actually. Do you think, as a country, we still have a mentality that is not for this particular era? Are we still stuck in the past, doing things in a way that we feel makes us feel comfortable? For example, now you're talking about your company hiring because you want people that can actually deliver. I know from experience that when you go to a company like that, they don't ask you to give me your certificate. they ask you, what can you do for me? Show me what you can do. You understand? But that's just like 5% of Nigerian employers. The remaining 95, when you go, they'll say what is where you have MSc, MBA, or you carry all these certificates, and you go with, and that's what they want. They don't care about what you can be able to do. At the end of the day, you hire somebody, you just go there, he sits down, he drinks coffee, and won't be able to deliver anything. You understand? So do you think we're still stuck in the past when it comes to things like this? Not looking at individual capacity, what you can actually deliver, but relying so much on paper qualification.
I agree. I think we're still not really looking at the actual hands-on knowledge, especially with tech industry, healthcare. There's so many. Obviously, most of the ones that people know about will be, things like doing carpentry and all that. So if you go to the technology colleges, right? Those are the ones where it was more hands-on, and you don't necessarily need to have like the BSc and all that to have those valuable skills that can help you earn a living. Yes, definitely. It looks like our education system is really more about getting people out to get that certificate, and also employers are also just looking more at the certificate as opposed to really evaluating the needs and the right skill sets to make that impact or help in the organization to drive that change. So I'd say definitely we need to, for us to really innovate, and for us to build things locally and all that, we need to shift from that mindset of having, hiring people based on that certificate, but really based on what skill set and what they can offer.
That's going to take a lot.
I think it's doable, definitely.
Yeah, it's doable, but we haven't even started yet, have we?
Yes.
That's the thing, because we need to start in order for us to get where we need to get within the shortest possible time.
So there are several companies, startups doing that now, right? I know definitely when I started my career, it was even difficult to have a discussion with my employers, on technology and a lot of these things. Now, you have companies where I work right now, all the leaders have some background in technology, and you can have those kind of conversations and discussions. And really, it is with those kind of people in the industry, we're able to look at, okay, what do we need? What are the right skill sets that we need? And then people now have seen the opportunity where they say, okay, there's a gap in this, and there's a lot of companies in software or in tech that are starting up, but they don't have the talent or the human capital. So that also creates an opportunity. So how can we create, if you go to schools, the quality of students that are graduating might not be able to meet up with your requirements. So those have started creating fast-track programs in Nigeria, just like I mentioned in India. But this is really not a government initiative. These are all companies or that are taking up those initiatives. But hopefully, by partnering with government can look at this and create incentives to actually get more of those companies starting up those kind of initiatives. That way you get more qualified or talents that have not the paper qualification now, but the actual hands-on skill set that companies like FlexStaff can hire, or to create that innovative solutions that we want, right?
And move us to a productive economy, more productive economy. All right. Well, that's it's a conversation that we can actually have all day, and I wish we had all day so that we can continue on this path. But that's the much we can take, gentlemen. It's a pleasure having you, Faiz Bashir, CEO of FlexiStaff. It's a very big pleasure to have you here. And Samir, it's always a pleasure when we discuss things like this, because our conversations always end up in me learning something new. So thank you very much for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, so this is how we're going to wrap it up on today on Daybreak, and of course for this week, Sunday. I know
Interesting.
you're glad to hear
Interesting. I can't wait. But what a way to bring this conversation to a close, away from all the negatives to some positives that are happening in silos, and what we can do to indeed push this economy as fast as it can to liberate more people and put us on the path of prosperity. It's been a pleasure having you join us from the houses this morning. Let's make it a date next week with you, with us. But remember to stay tuned to Trust TV for other interesting stuff for the day. I am Sunday Michael Ogo.
And I am Ibrahim Yusuf. Have a lovely weekend.